scholar at the Faculty of Education. And I'm a white-skinned woman with long, brown, curly hair. And behind me, there's a board, a wall with a red board. So I'd like to welcome you all. And I'll just say a few words about this very special activity we're having today. Then I'll pass the word to my colleague, Rocio, so that she can present herself, and Clarek, which is a very important organizer of these events, together with Universidade Emancipa. So we're here in an open conversation. You might be asking yourselves, what's that? What's an open conversation within a conference? That might sound a novelty for some. And what I'd like to say is a little bit about the history of this space as taught by the organization. At Rede Emancipa, we have lots of educational experiences where we draw much from Paulo Freire's experience of the culture circles, which are places where everybody is in a round circle and they can see each other and say, and the relationship between teachers and students is very dynamic. We're both teachers and students in this space. But then came a pandemic and we couldn't do a circle. So we tried to do what would a circle look like in an environment, in a digital environment, as this Zoom room. And what we try to do here is to ask everyone to participate. So it's very, very important to understand that we are not lecturing no one. Everyone that has prepared for this activity is expecting the participation of each and every one of you. So thank you for coming, and we expect to be sharing with you many thoughts and ideas, and I'll pass the floor to my friend and colleague, Rocio.
Hi, thank you so much, Mayra. My name is Rocío. I'm from Chile. I'm a brunette woman. I'm speaking from Cambridge, where I've been living for the past 3 years. I'm a doctoral student at the Faculty of Education and a founder member of Clarek. You probably heard a lot about Clarek during these days, but just to say that we're trying to, among many other things, we're trying to disrupt and to change a little bit how things are done here in Cambridge, in a very unequal, elitist place, and we truly believe that we can, Cambridge can look at popular experiences inspired or based in Latin America to do so, and that's what we are trying to achieve. I'll be together with Mayra, I will be co-hosting, and yes, welcome.
So thank you, Rocio. And as I said, we invite everyone to participate as well as through chat. Please tell me where you're talking from, where you're from, and your thoughts. And now I'll pass the floor to Taylor so that she can talk a little bit about her work and about what brought her here. And if you please could auto-describe yourself. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hello, good morning here. Good afternoon. I hope you all can hear me. I was having some sound issues. My name is Taylor Spratt. We're talking from Rio de Janeiro, but I'm currently living in Maringá, Paraná. Katia, shout out to Paraná in the chat. I am a white woman with blonde hair. I'm sitting against a greenish background. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm here in Brazil teaching on a Fulbright scholarship. And the themes I want to bring today have to do with both my work back in the US as well as my work here in Brazil, through the themes of critical global citizenship education. In my master's research and practice, I research participatory budgeting in schools, which is a policy that started here in Brazil and traveled through to thousands of cities across the world. Though it started here in Brazil, mostly in prefeituras, in city halls for adults, it's most commonly used for youth and in schools around the world as a way to think about a school of democracy. And I'll keep this sort of brief so I can also describe briefly my work here in Brazil and connect the themes of thinking about how we can connect the global and the local in this activating that praxis in the classroom and outside the classroom. So for purposes of time, in the US, what I saw and what I'm concerned with is the participatory budgeting as a policy allows us to come together and have a deliberative space to put your voice and your needs into the circle, but importantly, listen to the needs of others. And through learning how to deliberate, through learning cultures of participation, through doing it, the group, in the case of schools, students, but sometimes teachers, sometimes the whole school community, in the ideal, understands then what the needs of the whole school is to focus on an equity and justice-based use of the funds of that budget. In other words, I want this playground, but I can understand that this accessibility need is much more needed, this type of learning process. However, because of the structures of curriculum in the US, often participatory budgeting is implemented as not really a policy, it's more of a side program. And the curricular components that focus on this justice and equity get lost. So there's a theme that I want to bring up here of this connection between democracy, justice, and intersectionality in how we keep those elements more tightly coupled, more closely related in our work, whether in schools or out of schools and other institutions in the community. Here in Brazil, I work towards the internationalization of education at the State University of Maringá, Universidade Estadual de Maringá. There is in a similar pedagogical train of thought. We are working on bringing internationalization of education to thinking about global learning and global learning competencies as this idea of critical citizenship education. So while leaving participatory budgeting, it's different. I want to link these two ideas by thinking about the global citizenship education as one that connects in a Freirean way our local realities with global problems, that asks students and university members to do something similar to what I see the ideals of participatory budgeting achieving in the US and in other locales, which is positioning ourselves within activating our voice, as activating the student voice, our needs, and being able to connect that with other issues that we hear going on in our community and that we see from a global perspective. So this is really, trying to position international education and global learning beyond the market, beyond mobility, beyond study abroad, into a formation of subjectivity where we see ourselves as critical global citizens. However, there still remains a very interesting but sometimes vague question of but what is global citizenship? I think it's always kind of returning to this idea, okay, and then what do I do? So as one quick example to finish up my introductory part here, and in the classroom, I use a pedagogy called City as Text and adapt it to this idea of campus as text and ask the students, in order to try to link this global and local connection, to do an observation of the campus from a different perspective, from a perspective of a new international student in Maringá, but they may choose a different perspective that they can think about stepping into. And in order to read the local campus and engage with this idea of global citizenship from their locality. In the most successful activities, and when the students reported back their presentations, I noticed that the students, and I don't think you all will be surprised by this, the students that really got the concepts, we'll say, were able not just to think through a vague perspective of an imaginary student, but thought about, for example, a colleague that they have who uses a wheelchair, and thought about her experiences as they did the campus walk and all the areas in campus where there were some accessibility measures done by the university, but then huge issues of accessibility because of people not thinking through this perspective, right? So the students were able, I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast for the language, I'm going to slow down. Thinking through this particularity, thinking through the particular needs, and not just an imaginary issue of justice or an imaginary global citizen framework, but a real need of someone in their class. So in summary, I am really interested in this connection between particularities and intersectionality and a justice-based democratic pedagogy that gets us towards a critical global citizenship education. So I'm curious for the group to open it more to the popular education theme of the colleagues in the chat, of what you all think in your experiences, of the connection between democracy and participatory democracy and intersectionality, this focus on particularities in moving towards justice-based education. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Taylor, for your important question. And I'd like to ask now Aidan and Christina to join us. And I remind you that it would be wonderful to have your comments and thoughts through chat. And also, if you could please raise your hand to talk, it would be wonderful to see you and to hear you, as well as to read you. So please be welcome, Aidan and Christina.
Thank you very much, Myra. My name is Aidan. I am part of Collective Encounters Theatre for Social Change, based in the UK, in Liverpool, in the northwest of England. I am white. I'm currently wearing a green zip-up top, and I am in the dining room of my house where the internet connection is most reliable, and I have white hair. I'm going to introduce briefly the work of Collective Encounters. Christina is going to introduce some of the questions we wish to raise. My colleague, Wendy, who can't be here today, has done a short video presentation with further questions, and then I'll add one or two at the end. We are, though, going to keep this short so that we can get straight on to discussion. I've put the URL for Collective Encounters in the chat. Please do look at our work, but maybe not when I'm speaking. So we are, as I said, a theatre company practicing a specific kind of theatre called Theatre for Social Change. We use popular educational principles in this work, and also, obviously, we use a lot of drama techniques, some of which are derived from the work of Augusto Boal, although we use a lot of other ways of working too. We work entirely outside the university system. So we work mainly with working class communities around what is known as the Liverpool City region, which is the 6 boroughs surrounding and including Liverpool City itself. I'm aware that obviously Liverpool has an international reputation. Most people think of the football teams and the Beatles. It's very important to remember that Liverpool was also the port in the UK that benefited from half of all the UK's slave trade. We have, as a result, very diverse and complex communities here, and we have a proud history also of resistance. And I won't go any more into that, but people are welcome to ask questions about our work. We also, as I was saying, we work with those communities, but we do carry out research, and we work with partner academic institutions in that research. We have particular programs, the details of which are available on our website. And my role in the company is as the director of a program called The Radical Makers, which addresses the fact that it's very hard for working class people of color and so on to get into the arts in the UK. So we try to address that. And I also run research programs, and I'm myself currently about to begin a PhD. Before I go any further and Christina introduces herself, I would just like to, if I may, just remember that we are human beings who inhabit bodies. Just take a moment to focus gently on where you're sitting, if you are sitting, and just imagine that if you're not already in a calm space, but imagine that you're in a space that you feel calm in. You may wish, for example, to take off your shoes, find what the floor is like where you are, or you could imagine that you have a different kind of surface underneath your feet. That surface might be sand, it might be grass, it might be wood, but it's anything. It might be the soil itself, might be rich, fertile soil. Just imagine for a moment that you're there. I want you to relax your bellies. No one can see that part of us at the moment, so we don't have to be shy because we hold a lot of things in our bodies, don't we? So just relax your belly and let the breath come out. And if you make a sound as the breath comes out, don't worry, you might be muted, but it's good to hear our embodiment in this strange space that we're in now. So just breathe out. Just let all the tension of the week out. We've all got things going on in the countries which we come from that are interesting. So we'll just let those be put aside for now. And then just breathe in gently again through your nose. You can close your eyes if you wish. Breathe out again. Just sit squarely. Feel the presence of the chair against your back if you have that kind of chair. Just feel which parts of your body feel good, and let the focus on those parts of your body flow into any parts of your body that are feeling less good. And take a moment. Okay, so I'm now going to ask my colleague Christina to introduce herself and the first set of questions that we want to put to this group.
So, hi everyone. My name is Christina. Good afternoon, UK. Buenos dias, América Latina. Bom dia, Brasil. So, first of all, I would like to say thanks for the opportunity to be here and share our provocations with you. It's an honor for us to learn from you all. I am a white woman with a short brown curly hair, wearing a red long shirt dress. And I'm in my bedroom right now. So I am Brazilian. I lived in Mexico for 1 year, and I have been living in the UK 3.5 years so far. I am associate artist at Collective Encounters, where, can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So where I completed the Radical Makers program in 22. I have a master's in science on social change and political participation at USP, University of São Paulo, Brazil. Master's in cultural projects and event management as well in Center of Latin America Studies at USP, Brazil. And I worked as a teacher in EFSP, so the São Paulo Federal Institute. And currently I worked as a special education needs teaching assistant in the UK. So along our experiences, so there is a question that has emerged that we would like to share with the group. So we think that it would be interesting to consider collectively. So as we live with the logic of society that has produced cultures and histories which embody oppression, alienation, fragmentation, and hierarchy, we know that these conditions that impact human beings, organizations, institutions, and society as a whole in everyday life. So our question is, how, as human beings, thinking us educators and students as a unit, a dialectic unit, can we fight to overcome these conditions in workshops and courses? If we think in which students are raised to expect hierarchical teaching and learning process, and it constantly happens. We say, this is your space, and these students are struck dumb, they don't know what to do. Or on the other hand, the teachers, many times, even when they have the knowledge or when they don't want to, they reproduce the same logic during the teaching and learning process, which we should, of course, we need to consider the internal struggle that we face as human beings, isn't it? Like, which we intend to internalize and which reproduce these conditions where we existing. So we are constantly living a battle in which we have to constantly reconscientize ourselves. So our question is, how do we humanize education, culture, and engage in emotional liberation? So how do you think drama and theater as a popular education can help to overcome these conditions that impact on social relations? So I would like to say thank you so much. And Aidan.
Okay, I'm now going to share a short video from the second member of our team who can't be here in person, and her name is Wendy. Like Christina, she is a graduate of the Radical Makers program, and she's recorded this to share the next sort of set of linked questions. It's 2 minutes long and it's in English. So I'll just share my screen now and hopefully this will work. Okay, can everybody see the video?
Yes.
Oh.
My name is Wendy O'Connor and I am the Programme Manager for Collective Encounters. I have a passion for making theatre in social settings, and I advocate for disability rights and women's rights, focusing on invisible disabilities and women who have experienced domestic violence. I enjoy creating safe spaces for people to come together and use creative arts as a vehicle for working through social oppressions. In our part of the session, I would like us to think about what is the line between facilitators and the participants in co-creation? What are the power dynamics and how much do they remain present but obscure, even when teacher students and student teachers are working together to learn. For example, facilitators may, among other things, set the agenda for the session and choose the venue for the session, especially in the UK context, where these processes almost never happen in schools. What is the difference between power and authority? Does authority derive from the group agreement? How is it to be used, and what are its limits? Who controls the curriculum? For example, what is to be studied?
And to finish off with, I'm just going to give a final provocation. And as people have already remarked on, our bodies are currently a battleground. Capitalist accumulation has marked them out as spaces from which profit can be extracted. To do this, the body must be shaped, controlled, and commodified. Control of the body begins in education at an early age. Children are told to sit still. Play is confined to brief periods in the day. This is then carried through to all spaces where people attempt to learn together, including online spaces which require our focus in complex and contradictory ways. When this control of our bodies makes us sick, that too can be used to extract profit. Are we, as popular educators, still complicit in this process if we don't question the spaces and manner in which popular education takes place? Do we want a popular education of the head only, or do we also want a popular education of the body and the heart? We know that using drama, movement, singing, and other somatic processes frees up the body and the mind too. So, should all popular educators also be drama facilitators, dancers, poets, singers? After all, we make the path by walking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aidan and Christina, and also Wendy by distance. That was a wonderful provocation, and I would like to invite anyone who wishes to engage in such inspiring questions put by Taylor, by Aidan, by Christina, and by Wendy. It would be lovely to hear you. You can just put your thoughts into the chat and we can call you, or to raise your hands through the app, or just open your mic and share your thoughts too. It would be lovely if you can open your camera as well so we can see each other, but we do know that sometimes it's not possible. So anyone would like to begin? So we have a lot of people from many different places here. I am sure that we could benefit from all these diverse contexts. Well, as we would say in Brazil, I will go and break the ice. I don't know, is that an expression in English too? I'm not sure. Is it?
It is.
Yeah.
I think it could be easily understood.
Oh, okay then. Well,
what's the expression, Mayra? Sorry, I didn't quite.
Break the ice. Break the
ice.
Yes,
no, that's very English. Yes, we have a lot of ice here in the winter.
And that has everything to do with your questions, Aidan, because yes, I think that we are freezing our bodies many times. And the pandemic helped to do it a lot. So that's very contradictory that we are talking about bodies, but for example, in the organization, we've been like 12 or 14 hours seated in the last day in order to put this conference up for so many people, and that's not a very nice thing to do. If we think of a popular education, that should be for us as a whole, as a human being, and human beings are can't be separate from their own bodies. So that was very inspiring to hear. And well, I'd say that that's interesting to connect both abstracts in a way that we are materializing things, ideas that are important for us, and embodying as well, and things that are important for us. And they both talk a lot when we say about children, but of course not just children. I think that just if we're talking about schools and all the things that you said about what's taught since the beginning of our lives, it would be very important for us to consider that they are full human beings. They are not human beings that are going to be in the future. They are fully formed. They don't have to be seen as incomplete. So what they think about what's important in their schools and how they engage with adults in a way that it's not just a hierarchical way. I think that applied drama sometimes can be a very interesting tool in order to break these ice and to bring all their ideas and emotions into account when we discuss what's important to be learning together. So I'm very anxious to know what are you doing in your own context. Like, for example, Katia, Vitor, Alexandre, Suzanne, Arne, Keisiane, and Linda, and Aspasia, and Daisy, and Erica, and Dimitrios, and Vasily, and Lucas. So what do you feel about that? What about participation? What about intersectionality? What about body? What about popular education? Oh, we had something in the chat. It's Christina.
I think we've just posted some of our questions in the chat for people to look at again.
Exactly.
I'd be really interested to hear from other people in the room. I bet there's lots of really amazing work that you're doing. I feel that sometimes in these events, people are conscious of the need to let other people speak. And what happens is no one takes the first move. So someone's got to, please. So don't, if you've got something burning that you wish to say, just dive in and then other people will follow, I think.
Maybe if there's a language barrier, I should remind you that we do have interpreters in the room from English to Portuguese. So that won't be a problem to speak in your own language. We can be translated. Oh, Suzanne, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm off camera because I confess I'm in my bed still. So my body is in my bed. I've had a very long week of work and trying to squeeze in sessions for nourishment and encouragement and learning. So I apologize for not turning on my camera. I guess for me, I'm a professor at the University of Toronto here in Canada. And we have, it is a very traditional institution in many ways. I teach in public health and health studies, and I'm now also just recently promoted, was I promoted or demoted? I'm not sure, to become an associate dean of undergraduate programs and curriculum. And I find the role I started in July very difficult, actually, because it's a very traditional space and I'm not sure what I'm doing in it. I guess in my own in my own experience as sort of teacher learner in classroom, it can be very difficult in the health sciences to create space for people to come as they are, without the expectation of this, of the banking model. Everyone wants to learn something, to memorize it, to perform it, and get an A, so they can go to medical school or some such thing. And I don't like to teach this way. So or to learn that way. And so I spend a lot of time in the classroom, but also creating space outside of the classroom for other kinds of ways we can come together and share and learn, and practice humility, and really speak from our own experience and engage with whatever materials we're doing. I use a lot of film in my classrooms, and film specifically, I'm very fond of third cinema, which is not very popular anymore, but I'm very fond of films, also documentaries made by citizens, so not big sort of Hollywood, whatever, Netflix productions, but and encourage students to make their own, as well, as we engage in discussions of usually around structural violence and health is what I teach in. And the topic tends to be very difficult for students to engage with these issues because of personal experience. So it's this strange dynamic. They want banking education, and simultaneously they feel connected to what we're trying to discuss, but struggle to share it because it's intimate and personal and embodied, and it brings up all kinds of things. So through the use of film, through no lectures. I don't lecture. I come in with sort of starting questions to get us going in the way you have here today, and with me being very honest about who I am, and that includes recognizing my own intersectionalities, that I'm a settler on colonized land, that I benefit from that violence, that ongoing violence, not just historical, that who my parents were, what neighborhood and community I live in, and talking about my own experience, which can be very vulnerable. I also bring food. Food also helps. Fruit, bringing food into the space, and it takes some time, but over a series of classes, by the end of the term, everyone is sad that the class is over, and I think this is a way I invite people into the space. And assignments are also, we degrade, so we don't grade in the same way, like where I read something as the expert, and I scrutinize the grammar or the reference style or all of this weird things we're told to do in university settings. I don't know that actually begins to respond to the questions, but it's a start. I figured I should start since I'm in bed. I should try to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Rocio, please.
That's okay. Yeah. So Katia raised her hand also, but before I wanted to read out loud Vitor comment in the chat that I think it also resonates with what Susan was just telling us. Vitor, do you want me to read it? Yes, I think. So Vito says, I believe that this connection, body and mind, contributes to our connection with nature and the things around us. This includes students who interact with us in the construction of knowledge. However, the dominant logic of teaching in institutions handcuffs us to maintain the pattern of transmission of knowledge. Thank you, Vito. Katia, would you like to jump in?
Thank you very much. I will prefer to to talk in Portuguese because I don't know if in English it will be fluent enough.
Katia, would you give us then a minute in order for people to select the language so that they can hear the translation? Would it be okay? So
Yes.
everyone who wishes to be listening in English should look for the symbol of a globe, which is in the panel of Zoom app, right below your screen. And when you reach to this globe, you can choose English. So now you will be able to hear the translation from Portuguese to English that translator will be doing to Katia and to anyone who wishes to talk in Portuguese, okay? So when it's spoken in English, you will be okay then.
Thank you, Mayra. Eu sou estudante de doutorado na Universidade do Paraná. E eu estudo a alfabetização de adultos, que é um problema, talvez não seja nos outros países. Um problema tão grande. E a alfabetização de adultos, ou seja, o fato de um adulto não ser alfabetizado no tempo regular, causa uma exclusão. E essa forma de lidar com essas pessoas tem sido pouco trabalhada aqui no Brasil com o método Paulo Freire. E a intenção é fazer uma
And
proposta.
the intention is to deliver a
Paulo
proposal
Freire e outro
using Paulo
Rudolf
Freire
Steiner.
and
Rudolf Steiner é não sei se vocês conhecem, da antroposofia, pedagogia Waldorf, que na Europa tem bastante escolas, inclusive na Inglaterra tem bastantes escolas. Então, é uma proposta que faz com que a gente trabalhe diferentemente. Está tudo ok? Posso continuar?
Desculpa, Kátia, só te fazer uma pergunta. Você está com o globo em alguma língua? Talvez por isso está acontecendo o retorno. Nós precisamos configurar a cabine dos tradutores. Então, talvez por isso esteja dando retorno. Então, eu coloquei o Marcelo Andreotti vai traduzir de português para o inglês e a Mariela do inglês para o português, enquanto você estiver fazendo, ok? E aí todo mundo precisa selecionar todo mundo precisa selecionar, inclusive você, qual a língua que você vai querer acompanhar, porque senão vai ficar dando interferência. I'm just saying to Katia that everyone should choose the language in which they wish to follow up the activity, otherwise there could be interference in the language, because translators, they have a specific booth for each language. So that was what I was saying. Sometimes we are a little bit unfamiliar, but I believe that we are all going to, by the end, to understand each other through this activity. So in case anyone needs for Katia to say anything again, please say on the chat, and she is able to repeat it. So please follow Katia. Katia, continue, mas selecione qual idioma, em qual cabine você vai estar. Não precisa fazer pausas longas, é só selecionar e falar, no geral, pausadamente.
Shall I choose something? Here I'm in the English one.
Okay, if you choose the English one, you will just speak in English. If you wish to speak in Portuguese, please switch to Portuguese so people can follow you.
Ok, acho que agora deu certo. Então, vou resumir, faço doutorado no Paraná e sobre a educação de adultos e a alfabetização de adultos, especificamente, em Freire e Rudolf Steiner. A intenção é fazer uma pesquisa participante, ou uma pesquisação. E a ideia é trabalhar com 2 grupos de professores. E aqui nós temos, como eu falei, paradoxalmente, a EJA não necessariamente trabalha com o método Paulo Freire. Ela trabalha com métodos tradicionais, especialmente questões de avaliação, né, desses saberes pregressos, nem sempre são valorizados, né? O saber que a pessoa já traz. E quando você trabalha com adultos, sempre tem que não se alfabetizaram no seu tempo certo, existe uma exclusão que causa preconceito para a própria pessoa, não só a própria pessoa internaliza. Isso eu acho que vocês todos conhecem, né? Eu estou bem no início dessa pesquisa e eu acho essa questão do corpo, do drama e da arte fundamentais para esse processo. Então, achei muito interessante isso que vocês trouxeram, numa educação que é fora da escola, né? Fora de ambiente escolar e que trabalha com teatro, com essas expressões artísticas. Gosto muito da proposta do Paulo Freire de trabalhar com os portfólios, ou seja, que a pessoa produza coisas que são dos seus saberes e que isso seja incluído num processo de avaliação de como que é o andamento dessa alfabetização. Então, vou ficar feliz se alguém tiver alguma sugestão ou já trabalhou com isso e quiser compartilhar comigo. Desculpe por não ter entendido direito, que eu tinha que mudar aqui o meu botãozinho, por isso estava ouvindo um eco, né, à medida que eu ia falando. Tá ok? Obrigada.
No problem at all, Katia. We are all getting familiar to that. We weren't born knowing that, and I'm sure that we will get to understand it by the end of the conference. But thank you so much, Katia, and everyone is welcome to keep sharing your thoughts. I don't know, Rocio, if you have anything from the chat.
Taylor and Aidan were posing the questions that they mentioned at the beginning again, so everyone can remind it. Aidan was thinking to Susan previously. I don't know, Aidan, if you would like to read it or just.
There were 2 things that, everything Suzanne said was interesting, but 2 things that resonated. One of them is food. And food is a fundamental, these fundamentals, we're talking about fundamentals. It's lovely to hear people building knowledge around this. And as well as being embodied, obviously, eating, sharing food is part of that exchange. It's a knowledge exchange, isn't it? We different kinds of foods that have been prepared in different ways by people with different experiences and skills. And it's also about caring. So one of our practices in Collective Encounters, we always provide food at all our sessions, and we make sure it's food everyone can eat as well. So we try to take into account the various complexities of people's diets and things that people might not be able to eat for various reasons. So I was really struck by that, and it's really interesting to hear somebody who has managed to find space to do that in an academic context, because those contexts are often very restrictive. But the other concept that may be of interest to people, and if it is, obviously we can unpick it a bit further, is we've also been gradually developing this concept of appropriate vulnerability. And this was a long process of learning where we were collaborating with people from indigenous communities in Colombia, Brazil, Chile, and the northern United States. who were communities affected by mining. And delegations came to the UK because the companies that were extracting resources from those places are based financially in Britain. So we were supporting the visit of campaigners who were shareholders, were going into meetings with the intention of calling them to account. And some of these people came to visit Liverpool and they met our communities and we had an exchange. And myself and somebody called Diana, who was from the Colombia Solidarity campaign, learned that what was interesting was when we all spoke from positions of specific kinds of vulnerabilities, that it leveled the playing field in the room. And those of us that were here in Liverpool realized that actually there were complexities to the delegation from Latin America. There were people who had educational privilege. There were indigenous people who had also gained educational privilege, but they were in a different position to those people who were middle class and had educational privilege. And likewise, from our side, there were working class people with complex identities, of, for example, long-term ill health, or in one case, for example, sexuality, and that we found the process, which was partly based on popular education, enabled us to share these things without sharing too much, without any one person dominating the space, and so on. And this we called appropriate vulnerability, myself and Diana in conversation about the outcome of this. And it felt like we discovered some ways of working that enabled that to take place, rather than having any one person dominate the space with their particular account of their privilege or oppression. And I later discovered that Judith Butler had done some work on this in a book, I think it's called Vulnerability in Resistance. I just thought I'd mention that in case people are interested. So I put that in the chat.
Thank you, Aidan. I was also thinking how the conversation so far can also resonate with Taylor's question, with the question she's asking us, she's proposing here, about the relationship. If I understood correctly, one of the things you said, Taylor, about the relation between participatory budget, democracy, and intersectionality. In particular, from what I think Wendy, what was Wendy the name of your colleague, right? About power relationships and how they work silently in spaces. I think that's something that will speak directly to how we can actually consider intersectionality while we're trying to create a democratic space, and also, so that on the one hand, and secondly, the formation of subjectivity and I'm just thinking out loud actually, but how we can also talk about the embodied dimension of this formation. Because I think most of the time when we talk about subjectivity, we tend to take it to the mind space, like just to the terrain of ideas. And we tend to also forget about how this also needs to be, how it needs to start from our own space, maybe, if that makes sense.
Yes, it definitely does. All of that resonated. I'm curious if you can speak a little bit more to what you're thinking about silent power relations, or the different ways that you're thinking about it. When you said it, I imagined a lot of different ways it shows up, and it reminded me of Aidan and Christina talking about the difficulty of breaking down the expectation of teaching learning practices, which is, it made me immediately think about the difficulty in creating cultures of participation, of like, no, that's okay, I'd rather just sit here, can't you just tell me the answer? Both in the UK context, as you all described, as well as the US context and the Brazilian context that I'm in now in the south of Brazil, especially being a gringa teacher, right? Like, no, but just tell us, why do we have to go and do something? Why do you keep posing questions that don't have a right answer? Shouldn't you just have a right answer to tell us? Yeah, there's a lot to say there, but the silent power relations, I'd like to throw that back in the circle, if I may.
Would someone like to answer that, so I don't make it like a two people dialogue?
No, I would
Right.
like to just to say,
Great.
I think that it's really challenging, isn't it? Because as we said, the culture that we live, it's a completely other logic. So we need to try to bring experiences that could, we can create a mutual respect, collaboration, and exchange. But we also need to think about the human development. So as human beings, we can see that we have people, they have different histories, they have a different historical process. So trying to understand what do they know, what are their history, and trying to provide experiences or dynamics that maybe try to overcome this. I think that it's really the key. And I think that it's not a pacific, I would say, not a pacific, but I would say it's really challenging. It start with a little bit conflict until we can get it in through to overcome that and get in a good relation, a good environment. So yes, I think this is the key, how to overcome this and try to create dynamics that we can create respect, collaboration, and exchange between the people, and they feel safe also to because the most of the time I think that there are many students that they don't feel safe to speak through their lives. They got so oppressed. When you make questions, they don't want to say anything, they don't feel safe. So also create a safe space where they can speak and they can share and they can create as a group, isn't it? It's a collective. Yeah.
Would anyone like to share their thoughts too? Because in case anyone won't speak now, which I encourage you to do, I like you to share some. Oops, we have just Rocio just put something. Yes, please, Rocio, go for it.
I was, just to refer to Taylor's, she asked me to maybe expand a little bit on what I was imagining by this silent aspect. And I think that sometimes the very notion of citizenship and democracy, particularly used from certain frames, can tend to homogenize, and by homogenizing they erase differences, inequalities that do matter, and that we should put out front, even when sometimes can be painful actually, to start something later, right? And that's basically bringing intersectionality for me, right, in the discussion.
I'd like to make a connection to what Christina said, because we just actually had a very rich experience within this conference of building a safe place where everybody was invited to share their own backgrounds. It was our in-presence activity here in Cambridge that was inspired and actually conducted by a member of the Popular University of Social Movements, which is right beside me, by the way. He's here, he doesn't know I'm showing him. But
That's it. Nice to meet you.
That's Fabio Melody. But it's just that people were invited to do some breathing exercise, just like we did, and to walk through the room with some applied drama techniques. And then they were asked to before the activity, to bring their own objects. And we also brought some spare objects because sometimes the person just joins without knowing that prior. And everybody was asked to be in a circle and to put this object in the middle of the circle and tell a little bit about themselves and why has this person chosen this particular object and what does this mean to them. So it was actually something so magical and so emotional because we had so many different people that had so many different reasons for bringing that object and to be in that precise space at the University of Cambridge, which is a very traditional higher education institution. And we were actually sharing knowledge in such a respectful and even way, because every single object had exactly the same importance in the room. It was something that it's very hard to explain in words what it actually meant, because it was a moment where we all felt really, really connected. And then we had some discussions about that. It's just an example to see that we can actually build different kinds of knowledges that begin from the person themselves, and not just in these hierarchical ways that we are all accustomed to, that we're all used to, and that it can only happen if you really believe that the people that are involved, they actually can bring the same important things to the circle. And of course, they are bringing different things, but that doesn't mean that they're better or worse. They're just different, and that we can all learn from what people are bringing. Mm-hmm. And that was very, very touching, actually.
Amazing.
So would anyone like to share any other thoughts? But I don't know, Taylor has brought something to the chat. Would you like to speak, Taylor, please?
Can you hear me? Great. There's a lot of things I'm thinking about. One, I would just love to respond to Aiden's comment in the chat about discomfort. In several sessions throughout the conference, particularly one yesterday, there was a provocation of, are we solidarious or are we competitive? And the dialogue is very much, well, of course, there's the answer we want, and then there's the answer that is often more true because of, the systems that we are in. I am thinking about discomfort in relation to this question, and students wanting to be, in my own experience as a student, wanting to feel like I am in deeper solidarity, that I am a solidarious person, but feeling because of my identities as a white woman, as a settler, as an able-bodied person, as a middle-class person, as a U.S. American in South America, etc., that there becomes a question okay, but how? Or like a fear of, I want to, but what does it mean? What does it mean beyond just listening and learning to listen? Sorry, I'm having trouble with noise here. I'll try to move spaces when I finish this comment. But this idea of discomfort and how you all have, thank you, I know you're doing your best, how you all maybe have moved beyond discomfort or worked with that discomfort as part of the learning process is probably more correct in helping students, helping ourselves connect, move through these questions to a space where we are able to enter into these critical subjectivities that require us to not be afraid of those questions.
Suzanne, would you like to share your thoughts? I've seen you've put an amazing comment through the chat.
Yes, no, I think this is very interesting, and a lot of, I see a lot of sort of connection between the idea of appropriate vulnerabilities and you know, embodiment in our presence when we come together to learn or from one another and sort of read and read the word and the world and try to apply that, because I think with in another course I teach around women and health, and where women is a category we deconstruct so as to open up space and move away from sort of a dichotomy rooted in some sort of imagined biology. But we talk a lot about intersectionality, of course, and do a great deal of readings. I guess I should also should share that the campus I teach on, the student, I also live in the community where I teach, which isn't common because the part of I teach at the Scarborough campus. Scarborough is a 70% racialized community, so visible minority, many different ways of describing this very diverse group of people. And it's largely low income. So there's also a significant number of newcomers and non-English speaking multi-generational homes. So it's a very, and so when you come to the campus, I am a white woman, I'm Italian heritage. And when you come to the campus, the professors are largely white. Administration's almost exclusively white, and the students don't look like us. So there is a lot of, you can't, intersectionality is no longer a theory, or it's visible and very palpable and tangible. And it does create silent power on top of the silent power that exists, but in any given classroom on a campus somewhere. But sometimes that power is also imagined. So, when I start, and this comes back to this idea of appropriate vulnerability, and opening, working to open up spaces that are not just safe, but are bold so that you can name those or bring in some way into view the silent power, both imagined and real. And I say imagined because, as an example, in violence and health, I tend to do this in all of my classes to try to tell them who I am, like who is this person at the front of the room, and how did she come to be there? And that means that I have to be honest about, the fact that, so I am first generation in my family to get this, this level of education. I grew up in a very, in Canadian terms, one of the lowest income neighborhoods. There was a great deal of violence in my life. So I share this, and that's not to, and it takes a lot of care to explain that is not to say that those experiences make me an expert in any of them, nor does any books that I've read make me an expert in that, but rather to say, like, I am a person. I'm a person in this space, and that comes with all kinds of gifts and problems that we have to work together to overcome. And in my experience, at least, students, and I get such a great joy from their journals, they can take any form. Their journals can be audio, video, photographic, written. Like, I don't presuppose what medium they will use or way they will share, but in their journals, and in the dialogue that comes from very carefully sharing, but not doing so in a way, or trying not to do so in a way that presupposes I know more, but rather shows that I know very little. I know a lot about who I am and from my own experience, but that doesn't mean I know. This helps to overcome. It first helps to eliminate imagined power, that somehow I'm this prof who must, who must be all-knowing, and that's very oppressive. To walk into a room, it's very intimidating. It's very difficult to raise difficult questions or share your knowledge if you think the person that's going to be marking you or some such thing is some sort of expert. So it begins to humanize me, I think, and that begins. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't always work well. I can't pretend that either, but it begins to create space for us to see each other as who we are, including our limits, and why we're there, or how we got there, and how we know we got here because of some privilege that was, not earned, right? Like by virtue of, my whiteness, and so on. So I think these are all really important questions. I'm very grateful for everyone's conversation and contributions in the chat. It's helping me think more deeply about my practice and maybe where I could go better. I love this idea of bringing something that is important to you and sharing that with it. I think that's such a beautiful thing you described. I'm sorry I missed that session.
Thank you, Susan. I hope we are everyone learning here from each other, reflecting. I'm very curious about what others might have to say, to comment, to ask, to share. Yeah, Taylor is also bringing elements from yesterday's session that we had that was called The Formation of Militant Subjectivity. It was a very good session too.
So that's ironic that we're addressing the difficulty of shifting hierarchical roles, and we are much time in silence because we have a lot of people that are here, but a few people that are actually speaking. It's a little bit ironic, don't you think?
It is. I'm hesitant to speak even more, but until someone else interrupts me, I thought that Suzanne's last comment was very illustrative of the idea of appropriate vulnerability in practice. And in terms of discovering this within ourselves, it's a painful process. So it ties also into this idea of discomfort. And for those of us that embody certain kinds of privilege, we cannot run away from the discomfort. And I thought this was really, there's a critical race theorist that some of you may be familiar with called George Yancey, who wrote a very interesting book, which I recommend to people, called What Is It Like to Be a White Problem? He is a person of color, and he invited various scholars and others to contribute to this book, and it's really provocative and well worth reading in terms of this idea. One of the things he observed, for example, was people who exhibit privilege, especially white privilege, like to go around trying to heal things. So he asks us not to do that. He asks us to, why do we want to do this? It's actually because we want to make ourselves feel better anyway. So if we're feeling the discomfort, we shouldn't try to run away from it. We shouldn't try to make it better. We should actually work with it and use it as a guide. And I think there's many people here, many people in the world have experiences of trauma, including myself. But what I learned was although one hesitates to create hierarchies in this way, my trauma would have been significantly worse. My experiences of homelessness and so on, things that I've experienced, would be significantly worse had I been a person of color. And that was something I had to learn. And I was very lucky in that the people who helped me learn that didn't make it any harder than it had to be. So, I think these are quite difficult things, and the difficulty is exactly what we should be aiming for.
Yeah, also, Anna in the chat was saying something very important, and I thank her for bringing it up. And is that that talking is not necessarily the only way of participating, and that also each of us can engage. In his case, she's thinking a lot while listening, and that's of course a form of participation too. I did had a question for you, Aidan. I'll just go for it. Because I think at the beginning of your first introduction, you mentioned you emphasized very clearly that you work outside the university space. So I was just curious about if that's like a conscious decision, and if you could expand more on why, maybe, I don't know, like I'm sure there might be a lot of things to say behind that.
Sure. Christina, you may want to help me and join in here, because I have spoken quite a lot. So the origins of Collective Encounters are based, ironically enough, in one of Liverpool's 5 excellent universities. We were founded in 2004 to look at why people in the north of the city were not gaining the cultural privileges and opportunities that existed for people in the south of the city. That led us, in brief, to a long-term engagement with those communities that don't enjoy the privilege of accessing culture in the way that it's made accessible in this country. There's not the time to go into all the complexities of that now, but it means that we work where people are, rather than with having them necessarily come to a fixed building. In fact, we have no building. We did have an office, but we let go of that in the pandemic because it was a center of infection. It wasn't safe to continue using it. So we rent spaces in the city that are accessible to as many people as we can. And partly because our roots, I suppose, we do have some roots in the university system. We've kept the relationship up with the idea of research and praxis, I suppose, as being useful. We would argue that people doing the kind of work that we do need praxis. We do need theoretical underpinnings. And I think in the UK, at least, there's a deep suspicion in otherwise progressive, or maybe not always progressive, left circles. There's a deep suspicion in activists of theory. And there's also, unfortunately, a culture where people are still waiting to be told what the answer is. I was speaking with a friend of mine just the other day who was trying to set up an anarchist space. And she says it's really hard because people come along to events and want to be told how to make the revolution instead of coming along and helping to make the revolution. So we have always, since we kind of moved out of that university part of our practice, we've always worked where the communities that form our family, if you like, are. Christina, you might want to go on.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I would like just to say that collective encounters for me as an immigrant in Liverpool, it was essential for me. So it was through collective encounters that helped me a lot establish in the city and helped me to find, through drama, I could find like my limits and overcome my limits and trying to find possibilities. And actually where I am now. So it helped me a lot. And what is really interesting about collective encounters, thinking about an educational process, called me a lot of the attention, because it is the way that I could say the whole collective, but Aidan, he has a special way as a facilitator to the way that he brings the questions, that he delivered the mediation through the group, bringing the values that we could really feel safe in the group. He was always thinking about all the needs that we need, all the needs of each individuals. I mean, food, how they are feeling, thinking about the time that people work. So really small, like really details that in Radical Makers make all the difference and helped so many people from working class. So yes, I would like just to bring this point of view, because I was also a student. So I was the one that could participate, and I had the experience, and I learned even I learned a lot from it. And I think it's a really good example, the way they do like the meetings, the courses. It's really close to the Freire methodologies, I think.
I think we discovered Freirean methodology for ourselves before we knew that was what it was called. And that's because it's linked, as we were discussing, it's linked with drama methodologies, especially of the kind Myra outlined. We use that exercise a lot. It's very powerful. Anyone can do it, I think. But also that the practice of theatre for social change is also linked to Freirean methodology. So we sort of accidentally discovered popular education, I think, and then realized what it was called, which is what happens so often.
Yeah, and also like Freire himself was very clear about the importance of reinventing what he was writing in his time, because of course things change, the world change. I don't think like he could prevent that one of the most common formats of participation will be through Zoom, like as we are now, and part of reinventing those methodologies and being clear that nothing is set in stone is part of it too. And I think this connects very nicely with what Taylor was saying just now in the chat, referring to Anna's point, and how is listening versus silence understood by us as educators and as facilitators, and giving students safety to be bold, to keep using Suzanne's phrasing, but also given space to listen and absorb without pressure to participate by speaking solely. Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to expand on that, Taylor, maybe?
Is the sound okay?
Yes.
Well, it really was a question for you all, but something an article from US American academic Michelle Fine, a Black woman, Silencing in Public Schools. I think it's from 1993 or the 90s, but I think that's I think about often about silence in a very Freirean way as the absence of voice and the absence of empowerment in the classroom. And she does some ethnographic work there that's very interesting in how particularly Black girls in US schools are silenced. But at the same time, us as facilitators pushing for voice as participation and thinking about cultures as participation, cultures of participation as dialogue is limiting for all of us at some point in time. All of us learn more by absorbing in taking on that listening role in certain spaces. And so I guess I'm thinking about how we can take the Freirean idea of dialogue and bring it into, connect it with these ideas and our ideas in 2022 of diversity of learning and of accessibility and yes, I guess how we can think about dialogue beyond dialogue. What is that? I am a verbal processor, so I struggle with this because for me, dialogue is important. I do need to speak in order to process thoughts. And so sometimes I feel that's puts me at, I have some limitations and about how to engage people who are different than me in that way, or I'm someone who loves dialogue, so how do I create space for different types of dialogue? What do you all think?
Yeah, to start answering that, I'm gonna bring Anna's comment on the chat. She said that's a very good question. I believe a safe space is a space that we can choose if we want to talk or not. I also believe it takes time and an active effort. Everyone should trust each other in order to be a safe space, to deconstruct this idea of the professor who is there only there to grade. One practical example we try to do in our classes is one activity that the students have to make, and they can choose how: video, text, podcast. And after they can choose if they want to present it or not. Most of the time, just a few students want to share, but after they start, other students join them and also talk. Yeah, I think that's very powerful also, not having the pressure, but like joining collectively as the collective is built. Katya, I can see you raise your hand, please.
Yes. Now I think I can talk in English. This is a very good question, and sometimes I think that if you have some kind of question that everyone may give a contribution that is the same for everyone, or if you have an object, like Mayra was telling, that is a kind of transition. I'm talking about, not about myself, that is quite scaring sometimes, but I'm talking about the object I brought in the circle, like a pen, and what's the meaning for this? And then you can make things warm up, and it's easier for people to talk about. So sometimes talking about a specific thing of the biography is good too. And there is a very interesting researcher, maybe you know, it's Claire Petit-Mangin. She talks about the embodied mind, and she makes this very delicate interviews that people can express their feelings about something. It's a beautiful work, and I think she has an approach that makes easier for people to bring themselves into the circle. I can share maybe. Okay.
Yes, please. If you can put the reference in the chat. Aidan, would you like to bring your comment on the chat?
Sorry, I'm just laughing at the irony of silence and me. Yes, so there is a really useful concept that, again, we discovered by doing, which is a great way to discover things. I'm like that. I don't learn by just listening. Well, I learn a lot by listening. I don't learn by studying. I have to go out and do things. And so there's this concept of legitimate peripheral participation, which was introduced by Lave and Wenger in 1991, I think. We were introduced to this by someone who came to workshops that we run on something called trauma-informed practice, where we were talking about this concept, and our participant, in the spirit of, we were sharing knowledge, she told us about this book. And essentially, the argument is that over time, in any context where people gather together, a community of practice emerges. And people move through the community of practice in a number of complex ways, but that what they do there is legitimated by their presence. So I saw this particularly when I was working with traumatized veterans who needed a lot of time. And also, actually, I work with survivors of torture. We're doing a music project with them, and both groups needed a lot of time to firstly come to the group. So they might come for 5 minutes on the first time or not at all, then they might come for 10 minutes the second time. Eventually they might begin to attend, and they might just sit and listen. And then gradually people would get involved, play instruments or talk. Over a period of several years, people might start sharing experiences and so on. So they might at different times withdraw from that process and then reappear. And the idea is here that what's going on is this participation as people move around the topic of the group. The idea of the peripheral bit doesn't really refer to the idea that you're moving from a periphery to a center. It just means, it just shows how you kind of negotiate all the different relationships within the group. Obviously, the idea of legitimacy is that this constant negotiation is always valid. So that's what that means. And then there's aspect of trauma, which means that some people feel the need to explain everything in great detail once they do find their voice, because of course people haven't been listened to for a very long time. And maybe we need, there's probably a phase where it's appropriate for us to listen to that. And then as people who've experienced trauma sort of develop more in terms of how we work with other people and so on, maybe we need to speak a bit less.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, also this reminds me to something we tend to do very often in social research, I guess, which is like try to give people's voice, right? We want to give the people, the marginalized group, a voice when they already have a voice. Mhm. Thank you, Katia, for sharing the reference in the chat. Daise, I can see your hand. Daise Sousa, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Hello.
Hi, my name is Daisy. I'm a Brazilian. I live in the state of Tocantins. Nice to meet you. I'm a graduating in social work by Fundação Universidade do Tocantins, and I have another graduation in language and arts. Here we say letras by the UFT, Universidade Federal do Tocantins. I have a postgraduate in environment, development, and sustainability by UCAN, Universidade Cândido Mendes, Rio de Janeiro. And now I'm doing another postgraduate in linguistic language and literature by IBRA faculty. I have 2 questions to do. How can we achieve a harmonic relation between people and nature without to destroy it and run out the nature resources? And how can we develop a humanized education in a world that dehumanizes us more and more? Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy, for your questions. I leave them for everyone who would like to comment or to answer to those very difficult but important questions. Taylor, do you mean Daisy's question? Yeah, I don't wrote them down, but Daisy, if you have it, if you wrote them, can you put it in the chat so we can see them again? Or you can also maybe open your mic again and rephrase it so we can pay more attention to reflect upon your questions.
I will try again, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm getting nervous.
No,
the first question is, how can we achieve a harmonic relation between people and nature without to destroy it and run out the nature resources? The second question is, how can we develop a humanized education in a world that dehumanizes us more and more?
Thank you.
I think these are very huge questions for us to talk about here, because for us in Brazil, it's the question of environment. And to deal with this is a political question also. What do you give value to? What do you really want from nature? If you have a very, I don't know the name in English, but kind of extractivist, you look at nature as a thing. You can take it and you can break and use it. Nothing good will come of this relationship. So we have to understand this, I think, Daisy, through the eyes of our originary people, that for them, nature is a being like you and me. And when you are looking at it as a living being with the rights of growing and being respected, so you change this relationship, and I think things can be better. But I am so unable of dealing with this. I have no deep study about this. I have just this feeling of being a Brazilian and seeing this way of things. But thank you for the good questions.
If you want to speak, just raise your hand, open your mic, or post it in the chat as you prefer. Christina says she also believes that we should learn from the indigenous people.
I would like to share with you a thought that came from me, for me, from the other spaces of this Congress, this meeting. We think about literacy. I think alphabetization is literacy in English, when a person first works with language. For us in Brazil, I think to have everyone inside the Portuguese language is something very important. It's a way of inclusion. But for the original people, it's not necessarily an inclusion. Sometimes it's an invasion, because they have their own language. It's an oral language, but they have their language. They have the signs. They have their own writing inside this context. And it struck me so deeply. And I thank you for this meeting, because this was very useful insight. And I think we should look at this more deeply in our public policies.
Referring to that, maybe something I've seen, because I study like international organizations, and well, that's another topic, but lately, because of the climate change emergency so obvious, some of these organizations, like big organizations, UNESCO, OECD, and so on, have started to look at the indigenous knowledge, right? But for me, it seems still that there's some sort of extractivism in that way of turning to indigenous knowledge, because it just emerges out of the catastrophe, right? Like we need to look for other ways of basically continue doing what we might have been doing. So like just take the methodologies, the methods, without necessarily changing something beyond that. Hi, Silvana.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is a really difficult question, but it's interesting to think about. I was wondering if I could see someone talking about indigenous living with them, and I think it is great. And in many parts of Brazil, it is possible, although it is not easy at all, and there's lots of things involved. But maybe if you think about the school, the way schools are organized now, if you change this model of learning we have, the most schools all around the world, not only in Brazil, but if you leave the school and change it to do more experience-based learning, just go outside, learn from people, learn from the reality we have around outside the school as well, not only inside the school. And then because we are so focused on exams, passing exams, and doing things that the school, like this market model in schools, that everyone is struggling, professionals, kids, everyone is. So it is evident that it's not working at all. And then, yeah, it is, we are losing our human aspect in education. So maybe you can just recover from this, trying to provide more experience-based learning from people, from what people do, and how things affect us, like how our style of life, the things we have, our food, our the things we wear, our consumption habits, how it affects our lives. Not only for kids, because we always want to show kids about all the things. We want to teach them, but it's for adults first, I think. I think we need to change ourselves, go outside the school, think out of this model, and then try to reorganize the way we see, we look at learning. What is the learning? What kind of learning we're looking for? And then maybe we will look, we have to, we reach this human aspect of learning. What education is about people, and people developing their abilities, their capacities, and humanizing is about this, I think. I don't know, I was just wondering about, I think it's the only way for me, it's the only way for, to see the future in education, to deal with the reality we have nowadays. That's it.
Thank you, Silvana, for addressing the points and for sharing your thoughts. The floor is open if anyone wants to build upon that point, or if not, maybe we can start to wrap up. Taylor?
Yes, I'd just love to ask a ask a question about that point, related to something I put in the chat a little bit ago. I totally agree with you, Silvana. And I try to get students out of the classroom in order to address, in my particular class, the idea of a global perspective competency, and link that with problematizing their own environment and trying to think about, the local global connection by problem posing what's going on their own campus, for example. But sometimes I worry. I think maybe this is just requires some changes in how we present or facilitate an activity. I would love your thoughts, if you have any, that in asking students to go onto the campus, and in where I work is a majority I'm in the south of Brazil. I'm in Maringá, Paraná. The majority of students from this global perspective inventory survey we've done have pretty limited interaction with people from different backgrounds. Most are white Brazilians or white presenting Brazilian, and aside from there's very little diversity that they recognize in their own life. So the limitations of putting activities, asking for them to think through a perspective that might be a perspective they've had very little authentic contact with. They don't have friends and other people in their lives who they're learning from their experiences. So sometimes I worry that there is sort of a reproduction of this idea of giving voice that we do in the academy in the classroom, because on the one hand, many students are very interested in this idea to see the campus through a different perspective and step into that. But yeah, I guess that's the limitation, that I wonder if there's ideas here in the group of how to continue to make sure we're not reproducing a dehumanizing perspective in trying to bring a humanizing activity. Very cool, Silvana.
You have a colleague and maybe a neighbor, Taylor. Right. Yeah, it seems to me, listening to you all, that we still have a lot of work to do in building spaces when we can ask ourselves difficult and painful questions to later on do something with those questions. But there's a need to continue building those spaces, and I think this open dialogue, this open conversation is literally an opening maybe for that as well. In the spirit of the conference, we have been trying to start changing the formats in which we present our work, in which we share with others. But it's still part of the experience. We might failed in the process, but it's probably part of it. And also within the process, coming back to Taylor's point about like how we can humanize, making sure we're not dehumanizing in other ways, we might have to get rid of ideas with which we are attached, maybe, or theories or concepts and so on, while we walk and we continue in that process. I don't know if the Aidan, Christina, or Taylor would like to say something before we close.
I think following on from some of the things that have come up towards the end of the conversation, particularly about issues around spaces and about discomfort and so on, what I'm deeply concerned about, because I work obviously both outside the academy and within it as a postgraduate researcher, and the disjuncture between the two gives me a kind of horrendous headache. So cognitive dissonance doesn't even begin to describe my experience from working with collective encounters and working with communities where we share knowledge, as Christina outlined, and then going into my university and finding that I have to sit still for 4 hours while somebody just speaks at me. And this is a university that ought to know better, I feel. You know, in other ways, it's a good university and it's a good place for me to be with the supervisors that I have. But it does make me wonder whether anything can be done about the structure of university education. And I salute Clarek and everyone else here present, because you are trying to change that. And it feels, I imagine, a bit like you are trying to get a super tanker to change course in a bathtub. And the question really, I suppose, is about whether there's a worrying lack of criticality in UK universities, I feel personally. People are not willing to engage with uncomfortable topics. And yet we should be if we're thinking critically. So that's quite difficult. Obviously the marketized model of education is deeply problematic. So what I found really interesting is to hear from all of you who are working in universities, how you often, I think Suzanne was saying, how often what you do is you essentially take what you're doing outside the university in order to actually achieve something. And I found that very interesting. And, you know, it's really good to hear from people who have those experiences. And perhaps in the end, we have to actually dismantle universities, but obviously that's a big job.
Yes, it is a big job, yeah. Christina, Taylor, or anyone else? Any comment, closing comment?
I'd like to say it was really interesting, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think I've learned a lot from you all. So yes, so how important trying to share, and thanks for Clarek for trying to make the change, bringing to a different methodology, and that it's really important for us all as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Just echoing the thanks, and it's been really wonderful being in this space with you all today, thinking through these questions and our own interactions and dynamics, and continuing to think about how we can further ligar and connect the critiques of neoliberalism that I think come more easily to us and to students in the classroom with what's going on at the local level and in our own lives, and the more difficult conversations, and continue to link those more further in the classroom and in community performance. And thank you to Claudia. Thank you for everyone for being here today. It's been great.
Thank you. So maybe to close and to have a visual register of this moment, I will invite everyone who wants to open their camera so we can take a photo, a screenshot. Anyone who wants to do it? Thank you. I'm seeing some faces. Hi. Okay, so I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Wonderful. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bekele, I can see your hand. No, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Bekele from Africa. I have joined lately due to not good network around here, as well as the time confusion.
Oh no.
You know that our time and yours are different. So after a great challenge, I can get opportunity to join, even if it be lately. So since the starting of this conference, I have opportunity to join an English session, an English language session. From it, I have learned a lot of experience from different background presenters. So thank you, all of organizer, for your commitment.
Thank you very much.
As well as open invitation to join this session. So as we know, the time is we are now the 21st century that need greatly more than before collaboration. One amazing thing that I heard here is that the community day, the participants has mentioned very careful and interesting words like unity, solidarity, hope, honest, help, so the like. So this implies for me the time we are here is need unity and solidarity. So I'm one of the education person. Now I am studying my PhD program in Africa, especially in Ethiopia, Hawassa University. So for my topic, I have got different ideas that support my PhD dissertation work. So I would like again and again provide my thanks for all of you. Finally, it is very interesting invitation. So if there is another chance like this, I ask you, you and all of who hearing me, invite me. I'm volunteer to participate, even if my language is not good. I can understand what you present, but I can't perfectly speak like that you. So considering this, I hope you hear me, you understand me. So the one thing is giving assignment to invite me. The other one is as I mentioned to you, a student. I have write 4 articles, especially on education, but still they are not published. If the volunteers who can help me to publish this article, I ask the volunteers to help me. Lastly, I am, as I mentioned, very happy to being here, and I have got a different type of lesson from you. So not only me, we Africans need help from yours. because you are more than us in advanced countries. So education, as we know, it is the research-based sector. So it is the science. So to build our world, we need support from you, especially the skill support, the knowledge support. So even there is a short training opportunity, especially based on research, invite and support me and us. So thank you for patiently hearing me, even if my language is not good. I appreciate you, and I have honor and respect for you. Thank you very much again and again.
Thank you very much, Bekele. Thank you for joining. Yeah, one of the things we're gonna do as part of the post-conference activities is to email you all again, once again. No, but to open a call for everyone who would like to be part of the organization for the next year conference. And that would be a good opportunity to continue engaging with each other and getting to know more of us. And also, Bekele, if you want to leave your email maybe or your contact in the chat, that would be, I think it will be useful if everyone wants to write it down.
Thank you. I will send my email.
Okay. So thank you so much. I think with these wonderful words, we can close. Have a good day, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. And we'll see each other again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rocio. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ciao. Adios. Yeah, thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, Teresa, for your help with the interpretation. Yeah, absolutely. Bye-bye.